Looking at human development through the lens of developmental and relational trauma, there are 5 basic patterns of physiological dysregulation and their accompanying identity distortions, or in other words, survival styles that develop around our 5 core capacities that I mentioned before, just connection, attunement, trust, autonomy, and love/sexuality. Notice the physiological and then expressed in the identity distortion as into the psychological. So all our psychology is rooted basically in our physiology. So let's look at these identifications. Each adaptive survival style has underlying shame-based identifications that develop to make sense of early developmental failure. In addition, in reaction to underlying shame, most people also develop pride-based identifications, an ego ideal that reflects how they would like to see themselves or want others to see them. The pride-based counter-identifications, traditionally thought as defenses, are an attempt to turn shame into virtue, but paradoxically, the more energy a person invests in the pride-based counter-identifications, the stronger the shame-based identifications become. The pride-based identifications, sometimes dismissed as the defensiveness, resistance, and denial, function to protect against the painful shame-based identification that results from developmental trauma and represent their own kind of illusion. So if I were to refer to internal family systems, it's the exiled parts that carry lots of pain and shame and worthlessness, and the protective system, the protector parts, which have their own range. When working with these in therapy, by the way, it's important to work with both. Otherwise, the process can be needlessly painful and even harmful. In IFS, usually we work with a protective system, with the protectors, to get their permission to go to the underlying pain. This way, it's a very honoring and respectful approach to a person's inner system. So here are these 5 survival styles and the identifications around it. The first is around the capacity or need for connection. What does that mean? It's a survival style that develops around the need for contact and the fear of it. The core need here is connection, but the survival adaptation is foreclosing connection, disconnecting from the body and social engagement. What is the strategy used to protect the attachment relationship? In order to protect the attachment relationship, which, as I shared in the previous video, is very important for a baby to survive, the children give up their very sense of existence. They disconnect and attempt to become invisible, just to be still connected to the caregiver in some way. The core fear is, I will die and fall apart if I feel. And what is compromised here is this core expression that I have a right to be. What are the shame-based identifications that emerge is a sense of being terrified and inadequate, shame at existing, feeling like they never fit in, feeling like they are always on the outside looking in. Everyone is in this circle of love, but not me, and feeling like a burden to others. The pride-based counter-identifications to these are based on roles. I'm a mother, or a doctor, or a husband. I'm somebody. And they are also split into 2 subtypes. The thinking subtype, pride in rationality, non-emotionality, contemptuous and disdainful of others. They see driven by emotions, as well as contempt for expressing your own emotions, especially any vulnerability. And there is also the spiritualizing subtype that kind of live in a sort of ethereal realm, and they take pride in this otherworldly orientation. The reality, though, is I survived. So the direction will be moving from this core fear that I will die to I actually survived, so I don't have to live based on this old blueprint. The second survival style is around attunement. Attunement is the conflict between having personal needs and the rejection of them. The core need here is attunement, the survival adaptation. It's foreclosing awareness and expression of personal needs. Does that sound familiar to you? Here is the strategy that children use to protect the attachment relationship with a parent. Children give up their own needs in order to focus on the needs of others, particularly the needs of the parent. The core fear is, if I express my needs, I will be rejected and abandoned. The compromised core expression is, I need. The shame-based identifications are feeling needy, unfulfilled, and empty. There's this longing that when I get the relationship, the recognition, the money, the fame, etc., I need, then I will be happy. So these people constantly live with this longing and search and attempt to attain that one thing that finally will make them happy. The pride-based counter identifications is, I don't have needs. I'm the giver. Others need me. I don't need them. The reality, which is in contrast with the fear, is that the rejection, the abandonment, and the deprivation they fear have already happened. So they don't have to live based on that blueprint. The third is trust, the capacity for trust. A survival style develops around both the longing for and the fear of healthy trust. The core need here is trust. The survival adaptation is foreclosing trust and healthy interdependence. Let it sink in. The strategy used to protect the attachment relationship is children give up their authenticity in order to be who the parents want them to be. Best friend, sports star, confidant, etc., etc. Does that sound familiar? The core fear is fear of helplessness, weakness, dependency, and failure, and difficulty communicating directly, I need your help. The shame-based identifications are feeling small and helpless, used, betrayed, powerless, weak, and the pride-based counter-identifications is being strong and in control, successful, larger than life, on the darker side being the betrayer and the user. The reality, though, is they are neither small or helpless, as they secretly believe, nor as powerful as they try to appear. So bringing these extremes in. Fourth is autonomy, the survival styles that develops around both the desire for and the fear of setting limits and expressing independence. As you see, there is this push and pull in each of these survival styles. The core need is for autonomy. The survival adaptation is foreclosing authentic expression and responding with what they think is expected of them. The strategy used to protect the attachment relationship is children give up their direct expressions of independence in order not to feel abandoned or crushed. The core fear is, if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. If I show you how I really feel, you won't love me. The compromised core expression here is saying no and I won't, and any expression that might evoke conflict. What are the shame-based identifications for the autonomy survival style? Angry, rebellious, resentful of authority, enjoying disappointing expectations others have of them, burdened, and the pride-based counter-identifications is being nice and sweet and compliant, being the good boy or the good girl, and the fear of disappointing others, and pride at how much they can take on their shoulders. I can take it. And the reality for this style is that autonomy comes from knowing what is right for them and the ability to express it to others, so that their yes is a real yes and their no is a real no. So that is the opposite of the core fear that if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me, or if I show really how I feel, you won't love me. But actually saying a clear no or a clear yes and expressing what you really need and what is right for you, that is the real autonomy you can live from. Moving into the fifth survival style, love sexuality. This is a survival style that develops around wanting to love and be loved and the fear of vulnerability. It also develops around the splitting of love and sexuality. The core need here is a need for love and expressing sexuality. The survival adaptation is foreclosing love and heart connection, and then foreclosing sexuality and foreclosing integration of love with sexuality. The strategy used to protect the attachment relationship is, I gotta be perfect, seamless, flawless. And these people have this relentless pursuit of perfection. They're hard on themselves, have very high standards for themselves and for others. Children try to avoid rejection by perfecting themselves, hoping that they can win love through looks or performance. So the core fear is there is something fundamentally flawed in me. And the compromised core expression is I love you. It's hard to express that. The shame-based identifications around this is feeling hurt, rejected, and flawed, feeling unloved and unlovable. And the pride-based counter identifications are I'll never let anyone hurt me again. Reject first. The self-esteem is based on appearance and image. And this split happens when there is early heartbreak and a culture where love is based on looks and appearance within the family. Also when there is shaming around expressions of sexuality, whenever these stages where children, when they kind of explore that between 4 and 6 years old, is considered when it's like not sexual, but they kind of become aware of their parts. And also during the puberty, between let's say 13 and 16 years old, it's affected a lot by how these changes in development are treated by the opposite sex parent. This survival adaptation also has two subtypes. The romanticized subtype, which prioritizes heart connection, and the sexualized subtype, which prioritizes sexuality, but it's a way of avoiding intimacy and vulnerability. Okay, so this is in a nutshell. Each of these could be covered in great detail in its own video. One thing I want to stress is that there is hope, and it might take time, but with good therapy, these things can be healed and integrated. This has been a lot. This is textbook material. I hope this makes sense. If you relate in any ways to this, or you have questions, feel free to comment on that or get in touch. In the next video, I look forward to cover the phenomena of a dissociative lifestyle, when you know that it's kind of amazing to recognize that sometimes in people that you know, and even in your own life, he explains a lot of things that otherwise it's like kind of, okay, it's just the way things are. But actually, the reason these things are like this is because something that has happened, that it can be very subtle. Okay, so see you in the next video.